Good morning, I'm Morgan Donner, and this week I want to go ahead and continue that conversation that we were having last week about commissions. Specifically, last week I covered commissions from the point of view of someone who's interested in having somebody complete a commission for them and how to best broach that subject, get the best artist to project fit, and have the best success and happiness all around for everybody. This week, I wanted to talk a little bit more to those artists. If you're someone who's starting to get good at the thing that you enjoy doing, people will soon take notice, which means that they'll also soon maybe start asking you to take on commissions. And you need to know what to say when that happens. And that's today's video. So, starting off, right off the bat, first thing is decide whether or not you think you would like to take commissions. Is that something that you're interested in? Is it something that sounds like fun? Is it something that sounds terrifying? You don't want that first kind of realization of what you think and feel about that as a subject to come up when someone's right next to you asking you, hey, I want you to do a commission for me, and you realize, I don't have an answer to that. You want to go ahead and have that first time conversation now with yourself. It's okay. Be the weirdo in your room talking to yourself thinking, would I take a commission on making a historical dress? Would I consider taking a commission on something smaller, maybe just a shift, just a hat or a hood? Would I consider doing something that I've never done before, like a handbag or a quilt, or making garments that I've never made before? If you've only ever made dresses and skirts and someone asks you to make pants, it's good to kind of have that thought now of, would that be something you would consider? And I realize your answers may change over time, but thinking about it now is good. There were some articles sort of circulating around the internet earlier this year talking about the whole concept of whether or not you should, I think the phrase was, monetize your joy. And there were lots of people who reacted to that article very positively, like, yes, finally someone is expressing the fact that you don't have to make things for money just because you're good at making things. And then there were other people that reacted a little bit more negatively, saying, well, maybe instead of telling someone you shouldn't do it, you can just quit, it's okay, maybe you should have asked, hey, is that something you're interested in? And you're feeling a little scared and nervous. Okay, what are you feeling scared and nervous about? Is there anything, are there any resources I can help point you towards or talk through with you to maybe feel like it is something that is an achievable thing to do? It doesn't really matter a whole lot to me whether or not you decide that you want to sew things for money or not, whether you're going to take commissions or not. Either way is fine by me, but I think that you should start thinking about it now. Whether you've already been asked a couple times, whether you've never been asked, or maybe you've made tons of commissions but are maybe feeling a little frustrated about it and need to start thinking about it in a different way. So, hopefully this video helps you out. So let's say that you are indeed entertaining the idea of maybe taking commissions. One of the first things that you're going to need to sit down and think about is what kind of pricing structure you want to do. If you only make one kind of thing, a medieval hood or something, then you probably already know about how much time and effort and fabric and what have you goes into that item. And so you can pretty quickly get to the point where you can offer a blank price. A hood costs, this much. And maybe you can have little add-ons for certain types of lining or dagging or additional buttons or less buttons or whatever. But point is, you could do a flat rate. Now that's harder if there's lots and lots of different potential projects that you could be doing. So then you might want to consider something like a price per hour. For people who like to charge by the hour, it can be kind of hard to know ahead of time how many hours something's going to take, but you can usually ballpark it and say, okay, well, I think it'll be at least this many hours, probably more, almost certainly not less. You do usually want to overestimate, because if it turns out it takes less hours, great. But almost certainly it'll take a little bit more than you think it will. Once you've decided on what kind of pricing structure you'd like to do, the next thing to consider is, when do you want that money? Does it need to be all up front? Do you want 50-50? Do you want to be paid afterward? What is your preference? Does it matter if that person is a family friend or a complete stranger? Does that affect your pricing structure? Not saying that it should or it shouldn't, it's just something you should consider now. How do you want that money? Do you strongly prefer, especially if you're doing lots of in-person work, cash only, or would you prefer like PayPal or something? There are easily dozens and dozens of articles on the internet on how to come up with a good price for your item, so I'm not going to go a whole lot into that, but definitely think about that, and think about it for several different projects. Brainstorm, think of a few things that they might possibly ask. There's no way you're going to think of them all. Someone will surprise you. You want to kind of have those scenarios already considered. Maybe in the course of considering that pricing structure and dreaming up what sort of things you might be asked to make, you might come to the realization that, you know what, I don't want to make stuffed animals or pillows or this thing or that other thing. I only want to make hoods. And that's fine. Or you are open to the idea of like, well, if they're paying me, X amount of money per hour, all right, I will spend 2 hours making this thing or that thing. I know I advised in my last video that, maybe don't ask people to do alterations, but if you personally are totally down to fix zippers and sew on buttons, great, that's fine, but you should make that decision now. So if you have decided that you are interested in accepting projects, you know vaguely how much you want in order to do that, and you have an idea of what kind of projects you're interested in working on, well, now we need to get down to some more nitty-gritty details. Things like, if someone has a really short deadline, they want that project next week, are you willing to do things on such a tight turnaround? If you are, what kind of tight turnaround, what kind of short deadline fee would you like built into that? Are you making anything that requires fittings? If so, then you need to kind of consider, when do you do those fittings? How many of them? Where do you do them? In your home? In their home? How far are you willing to travel to do that? Are you going to require that they come to you for that? If you're willing to do long distance fittings, how do you want to navigate that? Do you want to have them send you measurements and then you send them a mock-up and you get pictures of what that mock-up looks like and you do that a couple different times as needed? Or do you want them to do like a duct tape dummy and send you that shell of themselves? How do you want to navigate that? Are you comfortable with people you've maybe a friend of a friend of a friend who heard of you and your work coming into your home, into where your sewing space is? A really big one that you need to consider is, where are you going to get your fabric, or if it's not sewing, your other materials? Are you going to require that the client brings you fabric and you just kind of have to work with whatever they gave you? Are you going to require that you are the one purchasing the fabric? That way you can get things that are as appropriate as possible for the project. Or if you're working with somebody who has a budget, you can keep that in mind as you're shopping around and finding things that work within their parameters. If you're making things that really should be made out of a certain material, medieval underwear should be linen. Maybe you have strong feelings and preferences about only working with linen for that kind of project, or maybe you don't care and whatever they give you is whatever you're going to make the project out of. Do you have any of those preferences? There's so many little logistical things to consider when you're thinking about your preferences when it comes to sewing. And sometimes, no matter how much you kind of do thought experiments before accepting a commission, you're always going to have somebody throw you a curveball and ask you to do something or expect certain something of you that you didn't even realize was a possibility. So you're going to get asked things that you don't know the answer to, but the idea here is to be prepared as possible and think about how you would prefer this interaction go. So a lot of our conversation so far has been all about what if you say yes, you are interested in taking a commission. But there is the other side of that, and what if you go, I really, really, really don't want to. And that's okay. That is absolutely, of course, completely fine. You are allowed to decide that you only want to make commissions for Christmas gifts or for really, really special occasions or whatever other reason. You know, maybe you donate things to your local charity for fundraisers and things. Maybe you only make fancy blankets for your friends with newborns, you know, cute little baby blankets. You're allowed to decide how and when you make things. If you want to sell some of them, but not all of them, that's fine. If you want to sell them, but only after you've made them, and you're not doing any custom work, that is also fine. Whatever makes you happy and continue enjoy doing the thing that you're doing. But whatever you've decided, yay commissions, no commissions, only on certain conditions commissions, please go ahead and post that somewhere. Whether you write up all of your kind of thoughts and rules and things and just keep it in an email to yourself, or if you're someone who has a lot of social media type things and that's probably where people are seeing your work and having that interest in what you're doing, then try to post somewhere on your site or on your About Me page or profile or what have you, all about, you know, here are my conditions for commissions. Here are my rules and what I will do, won't do. Here's what kind of the very vaguest element of pricing structure looks like. The reason I say that is, and I realize it's hard, it's very hard to give somebody a quote before they've said what their project is, but, you know, you could at least say, you know, if you were interested in buying a project like this thing here that I have made, it would cost approximately X amount of dollars. It would make it a lot easier and faster if they can see what my rates are if I were someone who did do projects and go, nope, I can't afford that, and keep moving to somebody else who maybe would be able to be a little bit more in their price range. If you are someone who doesn't take commissions, go ahead and say that. For those of you that don't have that social media presence, it's a little tougher. You don't really have a good place to post those rules, but it can help to have a firm idea a mental posting of what your commission policy is. At the end of the day, having every possible scenario you can possibly thought of, is never going to quite work out. You're always going to discover when you actually do commissions that there are things you hadn't considered, and those may change your game plan in the future. I've done a few commissions over the years, and I have slowly, bit by bit, discovered little things that made the next one a little bit better and a little bit better. But in the end, I think I've discovered, it took me a long time to get here, that instead of making something for somebody, I'd much rather show them how to make it themselves, or work with them, one-on-one to make that thing. But I find it so much more fun and engaging and interesting to help someone make something than to just do it for them. And maybe that's the whole reason that I started a channel. Subconsciously, deep down, I knew I just wanted to show people how to make things rather than do it for them. Whether you do decide that you are interested in taking on custom work or not, I hope this video was interesting and fun and entertaining, and if it was, definitely let me know. I have a couple of fun things coming up that are less serious talky, and I hope that you enjoy those too. What did I want to say here? What do I want to say? Oh, okay. Let's start that over. That got real messy. Okay. Don't offend anyone. Okay, that's the goal for today.